here. Let's go to Dan right now, listening in Los Olivos, California. Hi, Dan. Welcome.
Hello.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Yes, sir. Did you want to make a comment? You're on the air.
Yeah, is it possible do you think you could go to hell for smoking marijuana?
What do you think?
I don't know.
It is an interesting question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, here's what I think, and tell me what you think. It seems to me that if somebody's breaking a legitimate law, then that would be a sin, not because, let me just leave it at that. If it's a legitimate law that has moral standing, it's not a stupid law like, let's say, I don't know, let's say, well, I don't even want to give an example, but I think if it's a legitimate law, then that could contribute to an action being a sin. But more importantly, looking at the moral law, is this something that would go against God's moral standard for people? I think that taking drugs, maybe smoking marijuana, if that's the example we want to use, could fall under the category of the fifth commandment, thou shalt not kill, because that commandment extends not only to murder, but it extends to doing bodily harm to yourself. And there are subsets of this sin that don't include death, but it's the destruction of the body, and we know the body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. So to intentionally do something that you know can cause yourself bodily harm, and to do it in a way that flouts authority, I would say, yeah, it seems to me that would probably start getting into the sinful category. How deep into it, I don't know, and it would depend on the person and the circumstances, but I think the matter would tend in the direction of being sinful. That's my first glance at that, Dan.
So it kind of goes in that direction?
Yeah, I think of it this way. Let's say that you know deep down inside, first of all, it's illegal, plus taking drugs is harmful to my body. It sets me up for the possibility of graduating to other things. And even if I never did that, it's bad for me. It's hurting my brain. It's doing things. I really shouldn't do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. That's when we start entering the territory of sin, when the conscience is saying, this is not something you should do because there's something wrong here. And a sin really is constituted when we, in our free will, when we say, I'm going to do it anyway. Now, you might find out later, I didn't realize it was actually legal, or, I didn't realize that this is actually not harmful in the way that I thought. But when we, in our minds, recognize that this is something that's wrong, even if science or something turns out later to show that we were incorrect in our assumptions, but when we identify something as wrong, morally wrong, and say, but I'm going to do it anyway, that's the basis for sin. It's in that act of the will knowing that something is wrong. So that's where we have to take into account not just the thing itself, not just the action itself, but what is the intention that goes into it. If somebody never knew any better and he grew up in a home where everybody smoked pot, he just never knew, no one ever said anything, that'd be a different kind of case. But if somebody says, I know I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to do it anyway, that's where I would say you start crossing the line into sin. Does that make sense, Dan?
So yeah, it kind of makes sense. So if I have a guilty conscience, then I'm probably in the wrong then.
Well, here's the thing. The guilty conscience is the sign that your conscience is working properly, it's functioning, and it's warning you that you in your conscience have identified something as being wrong or morally impermissible, and then you did it anyway. So that is the compass or the navigation instrument that God gives to us, and we have to obey our conscience. We also have to have a properly formed conscience. So it's our duty to become acquainted with God's moral law as best we can and to try to understand as best we can. And we still make mistakes, but I think you put your finger on it. When you feel that voice of conscience saying, you know what, I shouldn't have done that, that was wrong, or I shouldn't do this, this is wrong, and you do it anyway, at that point then I think you and I and anyone else, we would have crossed the line into sin. Because the sin, just to repeat myself if I may, the nature of the sin is when you intentionally decide to do something that you on good faith believe you shouldn't do. In good faith you believe this is wrong, and you say, I'm going to do it anyway. And even if it turns out that out of ignorance or misinformation or something, the thing that you thought was wrong turns out not actually to be wrong, by violating your conscience and doing it anyway, that's where the sin resides. That's where the sin really takes place. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes more sense, probably.
Great.
That makes
well, Dan, I appreciate the call. I really do. Okay, we're going to move along here.